Hey Reddit. When did your "something's not right here" gut feeling ever save you? Wife called me while I was at work just to say she was home from her night shift and planning to go to bed. She had worked night shift for years and never called me just to say she was home and going to bed before. She also sounded weirdly detached on the call. I asked her if she was okay, she said yes. Just really sleepy. I got a weird feeling and told her I was going to leave work and come home. She told me I didn't need to. I said okay, then I left work and rushed home anyway. Found a suicide note taped to the garage door. I got to her in time, rushed her to the ER, and got her the help she needed. A week of inpatient psych, followed by changes to medications and doctors. This was about 5 months ago, and she is so much better now. Not me but my science teacher. When she was a teenager, she was standing near some lights at a pedestrian crossing with her and her friend. Very chill, but out of nowhere she had this gut feeling that both of them had to move. They moved just a couple meters away, and the next moment a car had hit another car and had hit one of the street electricity utility poles, and it had fell and exploded, minor explosion enough distance away that it didn't hurt the girls exactly where they were. One of the wires had also snapped and hit it exactly where they were standing as well. They basically were in a scene of car wreckage and snapped wires and electricity explosions and the pole collapse. Just real insane. If the pole had missed them, the wire would have hit them, and if not that, then most likely the cars. That gut feeling of moving away saved both of them. I remember the story so clearly from high school science class because it was such a WTF, pity I only paid attention to these things and not actually science. I was learning violin when I was about 10 from an instructor at my local music shop. I got the weirdest feeling from him even though he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I wanted to vomit every time I looked at him, especially his hands. After 4 lessons I told my parents that I had a terrible feeling about him and I never wanted to go back. Luckily, they listened and didn't make me ever go to him again. A few years later he was arrested for molesting multiple of his students. I have no idea how I knew something was off. He never did or said anything, but I just felt it. I'm just glad your parents listened. I woke up from a deep sleep at like 2 a.m. during a winter storm. Something wasn't right. I immediately went looking for my senior dog and couldn't find her anywhere in the house. My roommates had a tendency to let her out for a walk and forget about her, closing the door. I ran to the front of the house and found her laying on the welcome mat. She was hardly breathing and covered in snow. She had been outside alone for at the very least 5 hours. I moved out shortly after. When I was in college, I lived in a sketchy part of Chicago, Humboldt Park, Logan Square, before gentrification. I liked to take late-night strolls, even when I was living in that neighborhood as a 20-year-old woman. Yeah, I know. Pretty dumb of me. One night, I was feeling stressed out, so I embarked on one of my late-night strolls. I was walking along a somewhat busy road. Cars were zooming past me. Pretty normal. I wasn't paying much attention because I was too wrapped up in whatever was stressing me out that night. Suddenly, a chill shot up my spine. Hypervigilance washed over me, and I became more alert than I had ever been. Something was wrong. Someone was watching me. I quickly spotted a car. It was driving in the opposite direction, a little slower than usual. It was too dark for me to see anyone inside the car, and the car was pretty unassuming. But I still knew something was off. They were watching me. I just knew. The car drove past me and then made a U-turn. Now it was right behind me, creeping along the curb. Luckily, there was a Walgreens a few blocks ahead. I started walking faster, and the car eventually sped past me and disappeared into a corner. I somehow knew I wasn't safe yet, so I still sprinted to Walgreens. I told the security guard what happened, and we both went outside. The car was parked up the street, about 50 to 100 feet away. The security guard was a big guy who looked intimidating. He marched toward the car, and the car immediately backed up, made a U-turn, and then booked it out of there. The security guard called the cops, and they drove me home. I never took a late-night stroll again. My gut made me more alert, but it was really the security guard who saved my life. I'm positive that if he wasn't there that night, something bad would have happened to me. I wish I could find that security guard to thank him. I was walking out of a grocery store when I saw this kid about to cross the road. Something came over me and I yanked him back onto the sidewalk. Not even a second later a truck came flying past. He was probably around 7 or 8-ish. Someone did this for me when I was a teen. My high school was downtown, so I walked around down there a fair amount. I was standing on the very edge of the curb waiting to cross, and a guy behind me grabbed my shirt and pulled me back from the edge of the road. We exchanged a mutual "Are you crazy?" look. When I turned back to the road, one of the city buses flew past. They have these huge side mirrors that stick out pretty far. Probably it wouldn't have actually hit me, but it would have been close. I turned back to thank the guy, but he was gone. Batman does that every time. I went out with my best friend on New Year's last year and were having drinks with her friends when I realized I was out of cigarettes. I left for a few minutes to walk over and grab a pack and ended up talking to a homeless guy for a while, and when I went over to the entrance of the bar she was outside and said something mean to me for no reason and walked off. I was confused, so I decided it would be good if I took a walk to let her cool off and then figure out what she was upset about. I was going to walk down the street for a bit, but something told me to turn left, walking behind the bar and then turning to the side of the bar when I see a girl laying down on the sidewalk and people walking by her. As I'm walking over to help, I realize it's my friend and she's not very conscious. She was probably drugged while I was getting smokes, and who knows what would have happened if I hadn't decided to go that way. Scares the shit out of me. Was sitting on one of those metal cylindrical electricity boxes outside my house when there was a blackout. Electricity was slightly flickering in my house, no other houses had a blackout. I looked down at what I was sitting on and I was like, maybe this is the source of the problem. I stood up and stepped away from it, and like 2 seconds later it fucking blew up. Like a pillar of flame shot out and above it for almost a full minute. It was basically a gigantic Bunsen burner, and I was a few seconds short of physically getting fried. Forgot one. About 10 years ago, working security at a site about 50 miles from home, got off shift at midnight and didn't bother to change out of uniform because I was only going to stop for gas. 2 stations in the town I was working in were open after midnight, but it slipped my mind as I drove past the first one. Pulled into the other, same brand, same gas price, same sort of dump entirely, and just didn't like something about it. Nobody else around but a clerk that I could see, but I decided to go back to the other one. Topped off and headed back out of town, I get close to that station again. 3 city cop cars, 2 deputies and a state trooper are outside blocking the road with guns drawn. Turns out a city cop walked in on a robbery. Dude put a bullet in his vest, and the store owner knocked the robber out cold with a bat before the cop could recover enough to get his gun out. That would have been me, in a uniform with a nice shiny badge, but no body armor. When I was about 10 years old, I was going to the beach with my older sister, her friends and their parents. They had a van that was open in the back, think white creepy van, no seats. The other friends of my sister's friends took turns sitting on the father's lap when he asked if they wanted to steer the van. He then asked me and my gut said no. This man is creepy as fuck. The look in his eyes sent shivers down my spine. Once we got to the beach, I forgot all about creepy guy and focused on fun. Fast forward several months later, my sister's friends asked if my sister wanted to sleep over. She refused and my mom and I were baffled as to why she didn't want to go. We kept encouraging her to. Soon she broke down in tears and told us that one night their father had molested her. The van incident and feelings came flying back to me. I wish I had not forgotten my gut feeling and shared it with my mother and sister before anything happened to my sister. Sometimes I still feel guilty over it. That was over 30 years ago. I don't remember what happened to the guy. I just remember a state vehicle at my house a lot afterwards. No one ever talked about it again and I never asked. I'm afraid of roller coasters, mostly heights, but they go hand in hand. My friends and I went to a theme park and went on one that was in darkness and went underground. I rode it once, sitting in the back, and really enjoyed it surprisingly. When we reached the start again, there was no line, as it was the end of the day, so they asked if we wanted a final go before they shut down. Something in my gut told me not to go on, so, despite my friends nagging, I didn't and waited with the bags. My friends came back around a few minutes later white as a sheet. About 3/4 of the way through the ride, there's a big drop, then it goes fast, and just before that, my friend in the back's bar had risen up. Apparently they had to grip onto her for the rest of the ride, whilst trying to push the bar back down. I was 15 years old and my mom dropped me off at McDonald's to get breakfast while she went across the street to get Starbucks. It was a shopping mall in suburbia and we were on the way to pick up a new kitten a few hours away. Instead of walking the 100 yards to my mom, I sat outside waiting for her to pick me up. Teenagers, I guess. As I'm standing there, a guy in an old station wagon with 2 kids in the back starts talking to me. He asks me where I'm going and I say whatever town it was. He says he's going there too with his kids and asks if I want to come. I tell him no, that my mom is across the street, and he comes closer. My gut is saying something is off, so I see a random woman walk out of Starbucks and I point to her and say that's my mom right there. He freaked out and left really quick. I still remember those 2 kids in the backseat. They looked so off. I wonder to this day if they are okay. In 2004, on Boxing Day. Not me but my mother. Family trip including all cousins and extended family on my dad's side to visit the coastal south of Sri Lanka on vacation, about 20 people in all. Well-planned trip, last moment my mother didn't want to go. No reason at all. None of us could get her to explain why, but she refused to go. So we went inland on a different trip to see some other relatives. Around midday, the entire extended family now on both sides were sitting shocked in front of the television, watching the very same hotel we booked being washed away alive by the tsunami. To date, she still can't explain what she felt. We were looking at houses a while back and found one that was great location. Would have been perfect size for us and didn't appear to need any work other than new carpet and stuff I wanted to do, like painting and switching it over from oil burning furnace. I just had a nagging feeling about it and my husband agreed. As much as we loved it, something was off with it. I actually thought ghost or something silly like that, and we ended up passing on it. I was still kicking myself about it until a few months later when it had a major electrical fire. The whole house and everything in it was a total loss, and the family that lived there barely got out alive. I had gone to this bar back home with a few friends, and afterwards everyone was supposed to go to this house party. I was game to go from the moment I was invited. Halfway through the night I had this gut feeling to not go. I told my best friend that she shouldn't go, but she insisted that she wanted to go because there were a few cute guys there. I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't go, but she talked me into it. When we got in my car to head to the party, the guy feeling was worse. I grew up around cars and drive a manual. My best friend is completely clueless when it comes to cars, so I deliberately grinded the gears and jerked the car and made it stall, acting like something was wrong. I pretended to try to fix what wasn't broken, and after about 15 to 20 minutes of fixing my car, cops and fire trucks followed by EMS flew by us. I fixed my car but told my best friend that I just wasn't feeling well, and she agreed and said my car breaking down ruined her mood, so we went back to my place to watch movies. About an hour after getting home we got a call from a friend of ours saying that the girl who owned the house and who was throwing the party was cheating on her husband who was deployed and came back and leave to surprise her and caught her in bed with his buddy. Dude pulled a gun and started shooting at this girl and his friend while everyone else fled the house. The guy definitely roofied my drink at a bar. He was totally mild-mannered and not creepy at all. Asked me how to sign up for karaoke and pick a song. Sat beside me and talked casually. Didn't touch me once. But then he pointed to something behind my head to distract me. I looked away and looked back at him, and he was looking away from me into the crowd of people. Was a very stupid way to distract someone, to point and then act like you didn't do anything as opposed to pretending to have thought you saw something. Then, I saw him screwing one of those little canisters back shut on his keychain. I asked him what he kept in there to call him out. He was cold and expressionless as he began to slowly twist it back open and said there was nothing in there. I stopped drinking my drink and he performed his song. Then I sang and he took off immediately after. It was really fucked up and I'm glad he wasn't very smooth or what could have happened. What always freaked me out was how normal he seemed before he became suddenly cold and robotic when I called him out on that canister thing. But it made me realize, of course a rapist would seem normal, that's how they get close enough to you to attack you. My mom and her entire family were saved from dying from carbon monoxide poisoning by her dad. He left for work, got a weird feeling and drove back home. Everyone in the house was unconscious and he had to drag or carry them all outside one by one. They all survived.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Reddit stories. Mothership will be glad with you.